The red warning lights flashed across the control room of Mars Defense Station. Lisa Carter sat at her desk, watching the screens that showed signals from across the galaxy. She had been working the night shift for 3 years now, listening to the endless chatter of alien voices speaking in languages she could not understand. Most nights were quiet. The aliens talked about trade routes, weather on their planets, and family news. Nothing exciting ever happened. Lisa often found herself drinking coffee just to stay awake during the long hours. But tonight was different. A new signal cut through all the other voices. It was weak and broken, like someone trying to talk through a bad phone connection. Lisa leaned forward and turned up the volume. The signal was coming from very far away, much farther than the usual alien chatter. She called over to Ryan Brooks, who worked at the computer station next to hers. Ryan was good with languages and codes. If anyone could figure out what this signal meant, it would be him. "Ryan, come listen to this," Lisa said. "I think we have something strange here." Ryan walked over and put on his headphones. He listened, for a few minutes, his face getting more serious with each passing second. He started typing commands into his computer, trying to clean up the signal and make it clearer. "This is not normal space talk," Ryan said. "This sounds like a distress call, a really desperate one." The signal kept repeating the same message over and over. Even though they could not understand the words, the fear in the alien voice was clear. Someone out there was in terrible trouble. Ryan worked for 2 hours using every computer program he had to decode the message. Slowly, the alien words started to make sense. What they learned made both of them go cold. The message was from something called the Zephyrian Alliance. They were a group of 7 different alien species who lived together peacefully in a star system called Kepler 442. But now they were all going to die. Something called the Devourers had woken up after sleeping for thousands of years. These Devourers were not alive like humans or other aliens. They were machines, but not regular machines. They were smart machines that could think and plan and build more of themselves. The Devourers were eating entire planets. They would land on a world and strip away everything on it. All the plants, all the animals, all the people. Then they would use what they took to build more Devourer ships. Each world they ate made them stronger. "We need to tell Admiral Morrison about this right away," Lisa said. Admiral Kate Morrison was in charge of Earth's Third Fleet, the most powerful group of warships humanity had ever built. She was sleeping when Lisa called, but she came to the station immediately when she heard about the message. Admiral Morrison was a tough woman who had spent 30 years in space. She had fought pirates and defended human colonies from attack. But as she listened to the alien distress call, even she looked worried. "How far away is this Kepler 442 system?" she asked. "About 1,200 light years," Ryan answered. "That is farther than any human ship has ever traveled." Dr. Alex Turner arrived at the station an hour later. He was Earth's best expert on alien life forms. Admiral Morrison had called him because she needed to understand what they were dealing with. Dr. Turner studied the data that came with the distress call. The Zephyrians had included pictures and information about the Devourers. What he saw made him very afraid. "These machines are not just attacking random planets," he told Admiral Morrison. "They have a plan. Look at this pattern." He showed her a map of the galaxy on his computer screen. Red dots marked the worlds the Devourers had already destroyed. Green dots showed where they were attacking now. Yellow dots predicted where they would go next. "They are moving in a straight line through space," Dr. Turner explained. "If they keep going in this direction, they will reach human space in about 50 years, maybe less if they keep getting stronger." Admiral Morrison stared at the map for a long time. She was thinking about the millions of humans living on colonies throughout their part of the galaxy. She thought about Earth itself, with its blue oceans and green forests. She thought about her own daughter, who was only 10 years old. "We have to do something," she said finally. "If we let these Devourers destroy the Zephyrians, we will be next." But helping the Zephyrians would not be easy. Kepler 442 was incredibly far away. Getting there would require using Earth's newest and most dangerous technology. The quantum fold drives could bend space and time to travel vast distances instantly, but they had never been tested on such a long journey. Even if they could get there. Earth's fleet would be facing an enemy unlike anything they had ever fought. The Devourers had destroyed entire civilizations. What chance did humans have against such powerful machines? Admiral Morrison called an emergency meeting with Earth's leaders. She played the alien distress call for them and showed them Dr. Turner's predictions about the Devourer advance. President Helen Wade listened carefully to everything. She was a smart woman who had led Earth through many difficult times, but this decision was harder than any she had made before. "How many ships can we send?" President Wade asked. "I can assemble 200 warships," Admiral Morrison replied. "That includes our biggest dreadnoughts and our fastest carriers. About 50,000 people total. And if we send them, what are our chances of success?" Admiral Morrison was quiet for a moment. She was an honest person who did not like to lie, even when the truth was hard to hear. "I do not know," she said. "We have never fought anything like the Devourers before. But I do know that if we do nothing, they will eventually come for us. Fighting them at Kepler 442 might be our only chance to stop them before they get too strong." President Wade thought about all the risks. Sending Earth's best ships and soldiers so far away would leave their own planets less protected. If the mission failed, Earth would lose its strongest defenders. But if they did nothing, the Devourers would keep growing stronger until no one could stop them. The other leaders argued for hours. Some wanted to focus on defending Earth and let the Zephyrians fight their own battle. Others believed that helping distant allies was the right thing to do. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the Devourers, though Dr. Turner said the machines had never tried to communicate with anyone. Finally, President Wade made her choice. She looked around the room at all the worried faces and spoke in a clear, strong voice. "We will answer their call for help," she said. "Earth's fleet will go to Kepler 442 and fight alongside the Zephyrians. We cannot let these Devourers destroy innocent civilizations while we hide behind our own defenses." Admiral Morrison felt both proud and terrified. She was proud that Earth would stand up for others who needed help, but she was terrified about leading so many good people into a battle they might not survive. As the meeting ended, she looked out the window at the red planet Mars spinning slowly below the station. Soon, she would be taking Earth's finest ships farther from home than any human had ever gone. They would be fighting for the survival of species they had never met, in a star system they had never seen. But they would not be fighting alone. The Zephyrians had held out against the Devourers for months already. Maybe together, humans and aliens could find a way to stop the ancient machines and save the galaxy from being consumed. The preparations would begin immediately. Admiral Morrison had a war fleet to assemble and an impossible journey to plan. The fate of two civilizations now rested in her hands. The shipyards around Earth had never been so busy. Workers ran back and forth loading supplies onto massive warships. The sound of metal being welded and engines being tested filled the air day and night. Admiral Morrison stood on the observation deck of the USS Defiance watching her fleet come together. The Defiance was the biggest warship Earth had ever built. It was over 2 miles long and carried enough weapons to destroy a small moon, but even this giant ship looked tiny compared to the task ahead of them. Captain Jake Sullivan walked up beside the Admiral. He was in charge of the USS Ranger, an assault carrier packed with fighter ships and bombers. His pilots were the best in Earth's military, but they had never fought anything like the Devourers. "The loading is almost finished," Captain Sullivan reported. "My pilots are nervous but ready. Squadron leader Amy Foster has been drilling them day and night on the new attack patterns." Admiral Morrison nodded. She was nervous too, though she tried not to show it. Leading 200 ships across the galaxy was hard enough. Leading them into a battle against unknown enemies was even harder. "How are the fold drives looking?" she asked. Tony Martinez, the chief engineer, overheard the question as he walked past. He stopped and joined their conversation. Tony was responsible for the quantum fold drives that would carry the fleet to Kepler 442. These drives could bend space and time, letting ships travel incredible distances in just seconds, but they were still new technology and very dangerous. "The drives are working perfectly in tests," Tony said, "but we have never tried to fold space across such a long distance, and we have never tried to move 200 ships at the same time. If even one ship is slightly out of position when we fold, it could be torn apart. The three officers stood quietly for a moment, thinking about all the things that could go wrong. Then Admiral Morrison straightened her shoulders and looked determined. We'll make it work, she said. We have to. Dr. Sarah Kim was working in the medical bay of the Defiance, preparing for the wounded soldiers she knew would come. She had studied the data about Zephyrian biology that came with their distress call. The aliens were very different from humans, but she thought she could help them if needed. The Zephyrians were made of something like living crystal. They did not have blood like humans, but instead had a kind of energy that flowed through their bodies. Dr. Kim had created new medical tools that could work on both human and alien patients. In another part of the ship, Ben Rogers was planning battle strategies. He was the fleet's best tactical expert, and his job was to figure out how to fight the Devourers. But it was hard to make plans when they knew so little about their enemy. The Zephyrian distress call included some pictures of Devourer ships, but the images were unclear. The machines seemed to change shape during battle, growing new weapons and armor as needed. Some Devourer ships were as small as human fighters. Others were bigger than entire cities. They do not fight like any enemy we have faced before, Ben told Admiral Morrison during a planning meeting. Most enemies try to protect their important ships and leaders, but the Devourers seem to treat every ship the same. They attack with everything at once like a swarm of angry insects. Admiral Morrison studied the battle reports on her computer screen. The Zephyrians had been fighting for months, but they were losing badly. 3 of their 7 worlds had already been stripped bare by the Devourers. The remaining 4 worlds were under constant attack. What about their weaknesses? She asked. Every enemy has something we can use against them. Ben shook his head. The Zephyrians have not found any real weaknesses yet. The Devourers learn from every battle and change their tactics. What works once never works again. This news was discouraging, but Admiral Morrison refused to give up hope. Humans had survived and won battles before by being creative and unpredictable. Maybe that would be enough against the Devourers too. The final preparations took 2 weeks. Every ship was loaded with weapons, food, medical supplies, and spare parts. The crews practiced emergency procedures and studied everything they could about their destination. Families said goodbye to their loved ones, not knowing if they would ever see them again. Amy Foster gathered her pilots in the Rangers' briefing room for one last training session. She looked at the young men and women who would be flying their fighters into battle against impossible odds. I know you are scared, she told them. I am scared too. We are going to fight an enemy that has destroyed entire civilizations. But remember that we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every living thing in the galaxy. One young pilot raised his hand. What if the Devourers are too strong for us? What if we cannot win? Amy was quiet for a moment. Then, she smiled. Then we make them pay a price they will never forget. Humans do not give up easily. Even if we lose, we will hurt them badly enough that other species might have a chance to finish what we started. The day of departure finally arrived. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at her fleet through the main viewing window. 200 ships floated in perfect formation, waiting for her order. She had trained most of these captains herself over the years. They were good people who trusted her to lead them safely through the dangerous journey ahead. Tony Martinez reported from the engine room. All ships report their full drives are ready. The navigation computers are locked onto the Kepler 442 coordinates. We are ready to jump on your command. Admiral Morrison took a deep breath. Once she gave the order, there would be no turning back. The fleet would fold space and appear in a distant star system where a desperate battle was already raging. Some of her ships might not survive the journey. Others might be destroyed in the fighting that would surely follow. But she thought about the alien voices in that distress call, begging for someone to help them. She thought about the Devourer machines slowly consuming world after world, growing stronger with each victory. She thought about her own daughter back on Earth and all the children who deserved to grow up in a galaxy free from such terrible threats. Begin the fold sequence, she ordered. Tony's voice came over the communication system, counting down the final seconds. Fold drive charging. All ships report ready. Folding space in 10 seconds. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fold initiated. The stars outside the window suddenly stretched into long lines of light. Space itself seemed to twist and bend around the fleet. For a moment that felt like hours, the ships existed everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Then reality snapped back into focus. They were no longer near Earth. The familiar yellow sun was gone, replaced by a different star that burned with orange light. But what Admiral Morrison saw in this new star system made her heart sink. 3 planets hung dead and gray in space, their surfaces covered with geometric metal structures that had not been there before. These were the worlds the Devourers had already consumed. Around the remaining 4 planets, thousands of dark shapes moved through space like a plague of metal locusts. The Devourer fleet was even bigger than the reports had suggested. There were so many enemy ships that they blocked out the light from some of the stars behind them. Against this vast swarm, the human fleet looked tiny and helpless. But they were not alone. Bright flashes of light near the 4th planet showed that someone was still fighting. The Zephyrians had not given up yet. After months of desperate battle, they were still trying to protect their remaining worlds. Admiral Morrison felt a mixture of fear and determination flow through her. The journey was over. Now the real test would begin. The human fleet hung in space, trying to understand what they were seeing. The Devourer swarm was like nothing they had imagined. Millions of dark metal ships moved through space in perfect coordination, surrounding the last 4 Zephyrian worlds, like hunters circling wounded prey. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display on her bridge. Red dots showed enemy positions. There were so many red dots that they almost covered the entire screen. The few blue dots representing Zephyrian ships looked tiny and scattered in comparison. Communications. Try to contact the Zephyrian fleet, Admiral Morrison ordered. Lisa Carter, who had been transferred to the Defiance for this mission, worked her controls carefully. The Zephyrians used sound frequencies that were very different from human speech. It took several minutes before she could establish a connection. Admiral, I have contact with someone calling himself Fleet Singer Vexhai, Lisa reported. The translation system is working, but his voice sounds strange. Admiral Morrison put on her headset. The alien voice that came through was unlike anything she had ever heard. It was musical, like several people singing at the same time, but the words were clearly understood. Unknown vessels, the voice sang. You appear to be organic life forms, but your ships are unfamiliar. Please identify yourselves before the machine swarm detects your presence. This is Admiral Kate Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet, she replied. We received your distress call and have come to help you fight the Devourers. There was a long silence. Then Fleet Singer Vexhai spoke again, and his musical voice sounded amazed. Earth? But your world is impossibly far from here. How did you travel such a distance? And why would you risk your lives for strangers you have never met? Admiral Morrison thought about how to answer. The truth was complicated. They had come partly to help the Zephyrians, but also because the Devourers threatened Earth too. Because no one should face extinction alone, she said finally. We may be strangers, but we are all fighting for the same thing. The right to exist. Fleet Singer Vexhai invited Admiral Morrison to bring a small group to his command ship, the Harmonic Dawn. The meeting would be dangerous. They would have to travel through space filled with Devourer patrols, but they needed to coordinate their efforts if they had any hope of winning. Admiral Morrison chose her team carefully. She brought Dr. Alex Turner to study Zephyrian biology and technology. Lieutenant Commander Nina Walsh came along because she was good at communicating with different cultures. Captain Jake Sullivan joined them because they needed military expertise. The journey to the Harmonic Dawn took 2 hours. They flew in a small, fast ship that could avoid the larger Devourer patrols. As they got closer to the Zephyrian vessel, Dr. Turner stared in wonder at its design. The Harmonic Dawn did not look like any human ship. It was made of what appeared to be living crystal that changed colors as they watched. The ship seemed to grow and shift its shape slightly, like a living creature breathing slowly. When they docked inside the alien vessel, The humans got their first look at the Zephyrians themselves. Fleet Singer Vex-High was tall and thin, made of translucent crystal that sparkled with inner light. When he spoke, his entire body resonated with musical tones. "Welcome to our dying system," he sang sadly. "You have arrived at the end of our civilization story." The Zephyrians had been fighting the Devourers for 6 months. They had lost over half their population and 3 entire worlds. Their remaining forces were scattered and desperate, but they had learned some important things about their enemy. "The Devourers are not just machines," Fleet Singer Vex-High explained. "They are a collective intelligence. Every ship is connected to every other ship. They share information instantly and adapt their tactics based on what they learn from each battle." Dr. Turner studied the data the Zephyrians had gathered. The Devourers seemed to be looking for specific types of materials and energy sources. They did not just destroy randomly. They had a plan. "They are building something," Dr. Turner realized. "Each world they consume gives them materials for a larger project. But what are they trying to build?" Fleet Singer Vex-High showed them images from deep space telescopes. Far beyond the Kepler 442 system, the Devourers were constructing something enormous. It looked like a massive ring of metal and energy, big enough to surround an entire star. "We believe it is a weapon," the alien commander sang. "Something that can destroy multiple star systems at once. If they finish building it, they will be able to consume the entire galaxy in a matter of years." This news made the human visitors very worried. They had thought the Devourers were just another conquering army. But if they were building a superweapon, the threat was much worse than anyone had imagined. Lieutenant Commander Walsh asked about Zephyrian technology. What weapons and defenses did they have that might help in the fight ahead? The Zephyrians had remarkable abilities. They could manipulate energy fields and create powerful defensive barriers. Their crystal ships could bend light and energy beams, making them hard to target. But they were not good at aggressive fighting. Their culture was peaceful, and they thought in terms of defense rather than attack. "We have held the Devourers back for months," Fleet Singer Vex-High admitted. "But we cannot destroy them. Every time we damage their ships, they rebuild themselves using materials from our dead worlds. We are fighting an enemy that grows stronger from our defeats." Captain Sullivan studied the tactical information. The Zephyrians had been fighting a defensive war, trying to protect their remaining worlds. But defense alone would not win against the Devourers. They needed to go on the attack. "What if we combined our technologies?" he suggested. "Human ships are designed for aggressive combat. Your ships have defensive abilities we do not have. Together we might be able to do things neither of us can do alone." Fleet Singer Vex-High was interested in this idea. The Zephyrians had been fighting alone for so long that they had forgotten what it was like to have allies. The thought of combining their crystal technology with human weapons was exciting. They decided to test this cooperation with a small battle. A group of Devourer ships was attacking a mining station near the 5th planet. If the humans and Zephyrians could work together to destroy these enemies, it would prove that their alliance could succeed. Captain Sullivan returned to the USS Ranger to prepare his fighter squadron. Amy Foster gathered her pilots and explained the new plan. They would fly alongside Zephyrian crystal fighters, using combined tactics that neither species had tried before. "The Zephyrians can bend energy beams and create confusion," Amy told her pilots. "We will use that confusion to get close enough for our weapons to be effective. Stay close to your Zephyrian partners and follow their lead when they start their energy manipulation." The combined strike force launched 2 hours later. 12 human fighters flew alongside 12 Zephyrian crystal ships. The aliens' vessels looked like living gemstones as they moved through space, their surfaces reflecting starlight in beautiful patterns. The Devourer patrol consisted of 30 machine ships, each one about the size of a human destroyer. They moved in perfect formation, their dark metal hulls bristling with weapons. As the combined strike force approached, the enemy ships began to turn toward them. "This is it," Amy Foster said over the radio. "Let's show these machines what teamwork looks like." The Zephyrian ships began their energy manipulation first. Beams of light bent and twisted around the Devourer formation, creating illusions and false targets. The machine ships fired at shadows, while the real attackers moved in from different angles. Then the human fighters struck. They came in fast and low, using the energy confusion to get close enough for their weapons to be effective. For the first time in months, Devourer ships began to explode under focused attack. The battle lasted only 10 minutes, but when it was over 15 Devourer ships had been destroyed. The combined human Zephyrian force had lost only 2 fighters. It was a small victory, but it proved something important. Working together, they could actually hurt the enemy that had seemed invincible. The small victory against the Devourer patrol gave both humans and Zephyrians hope. But Fleet Singer Vexhai knew they needed to do more than win small battles. The main Devourer swarm was still consuming the dead worlds, turning them into materials. For their terrible construction project, Admiral Morrison called a war council aboard the Defiance. Human and Zephyrian commanders gathered around a large table showing a map of the star system. The red areas marking Devourer control seemed to grow larger every hour. "We cannot fight them in space forever," Admiral Morrison said. "They have too many ships and they build new ones faster than we can destroy them. We need to attack their source." Fleet Singer Vexhai's crystal body glowed brighter as he considered this. "You mean the processing centers on the dead worlds? But those are heavily defended. No one has ever successfully attacked a Devourer ground installation." Captain Jake Sullivan leaned forward. "What if we do not try to attack all of them at once? What if we focus on just one world and hit it with everything we have?" Dr. Turner had been studying the Devourer construction patterns. He pointed to the third planet, which had been completely stripped of all life. "This world appears to be their main command center," he said. "Look at these energy readings. There is something deep underground that is coordinating all their activities. If we could destroy that, it might disrupt their entire operation." The plan was dangerous. They would have to get past thousands of Devourer ships in space, then fight their way through the metal forests that covered the planet's surface. Many would not survive such a mission. Major Claire Anderson stepped forward. She was in charge of the human Marines the soldiers trained to fight on the ground. Her face was serious but determined. "My Marines can do this," she said, "but we will need Zephyrian support. Our weapons alone might not be enough against their defenses." Fleet Singer Vexhai sang a low, sad note. Several of his crystal warriors had volunteered for the mission, even though it meant almost certain death. The Zephyrians were peaceful by nature, but they were willing to fight to save their remaining people. The assault began at dawn, though dawn was hard to measure in a system with strange orange light. The combined fleet created a diversion near the fourth planet, drawing most of the Devourer ships away from the dead world. While the main battle raged in space, a small force of transport ships slipped through the enemy lines. Major Anderson rode in the lead transport with 50 of her best Marines. Behind them came 3 more ships carrying Zephyrian crystal warriors and human technical specialists. Their job was to reach the underground command center and destroy it before the Devourers realized what was happening. The planet's surface was a nightmare of twisted metal and geometric shapes. The Devourers had torn down every mountain and filled every ocean with their construction materials. Strange machines crawled across the landscape like metal spiders, constantly building and rebuilding the alien structures. The transport ships landed in what had once been a forest. Now it was a maze of crystal towers and metal walls that stretched up toward the gray sky. The Devourers had turned the entire world into a giant factory. "Stay close together," Major Anderson told her team over the radio. "The Zephyrians say their sensors can guide us to the command center, but we need to protect them while they work." The crystal warriors moved differently than humans. They seemed to flow across the ground like living water, their bodies changing shape to fit through tight spaces. When Devourer guard machines attacked, the Zephyrians could bend their energy weapons and turn them back on their creators. But the deeper they went into the metal maze, the more resistance they faced. Devourer machines seemed to come from everywhere, crawling out of holes in the walls and dropping from the twisted structures above. The Marines fought desperately, their weapons blazing in the dim light. Sergeant Dan Cooper was covering the rear of the group when a massive Devourer machine burst through the wall beside him. It looked like a metal octopus with laser cannons, instead of arms. Dan rolled to the side and fired his rocket launcher, but the explosion barely scratched the machine's armor. A Zephyrian warrior named Song of Stars flowed past Dan like liquid crystal. The alien's body began to glow with internal light, and suddenly the Devourer machine's weapons turned against itself. The metal octopus destroyed itself with its own cannons. "How did you do that?" Dan asked in amazement. Song of Stars sang a reply that the translation system could barely understand, something about finding the harmony in the machine's energy patterns and turning it backward. The assault team fought their way deeper into the underground complex. The tunnels were filled with machinery that hummed and clicked with alien purpose. Strange lights pulsed through crystal formations that the Devourers had grown like metal trees. Dr. Turner, who had joined the ground team to study Devourer technology, made a disturbing discovery. The machines were not just processing raw materials from the dead world. They were processing information and memories taken from the people who had lived there. "They are not just consuming matter," he told Major Anderson over the radio. "They are consuming consciousness itself. Every person who died on this world is somehow being used to make the Devourers smarter." This revelation made the mission even more urgent. The Devourers were not just building a weapon. They were building a super-intelligent machine that could think with the combined knowledge of entire civilizations. The team finally reached the central command chamber after 4 hours of fighting. It was a vast underground space filled with towering structures that pulsed with dark energy. At the center was something that looked like a giant metal brain, with thousands of cables and wires feeding into it from all directions. "That is it," said the Zephyrian guide, a crystal being called Harmony of Light. "That is what controls all Devourer operations in this system. If we destroy it, their coordination will be broken." But the chamber was heavily defended. Devourer machines poured in from every entrance and more dropped from the ceiling like metal rain. The assault team formed a defensive circle around the technical specialists who were setting up the explosives. The battle in the command chamber was fierce and desperate. Marines and crystal warriors fought side by side, their different fighting styles complementing each other perfectly. When human weapons could not penetrate Devourer armor, Zephyrian energy manipulation found weak points. When alien defenses failed, human explosives cleared the way forward. Major Anderson was wounded when a Devourer beam weapon grazed her shoulder, but she kept fighting. Sergeant Cooper ran out of ammunition and started using Devourer weapons he picked up from destroyed machines. 3 Zephyrian warriors sacrificed themselves to protect the bomb team from a massive machine attack. Finally, the explosives were ready. The technical team had placed charges throughout the giant metal brain and connected them to a single detonator. But someone had to stay behind to make sure the explosion happened at the right time. Song of Stars volunteered for this final duty. The crystal warrior's body was already badly damaged from the fighting, and he knew he could not survive the journey back to the surface. "I will sing the destruction song," he told Major Anderson. "When the harmony changes, you will know it is time to run." The surviving members of the assault team fought their way back through the tunnels while Song of Stars remained behind. They could hear his voice echoing through the complex, a beautiful alien song that seemed to make the Devourer machines move more slowly. They reached the surface just as the song stopped. For a moment, everything was silent. Then the ground shook with a tremendous explosion that seemed to come from the planet's core itself. The giant metal brain was destroyed, and with it, the coordination that had made the Devourer swarm so dangerous. Across the star system, enemy ships began to move more slowly and make mistakes. The tide of the war was finally beginning to turn. The destruction of the command center changed everything. Across the Kepler 442 system, Devourer ships that had moved in perfect coordination began to make mistakes. Some crashed into each other, others fired at empty space or forgot to defend themselves when attacked. Admiral Morrison watched the tactical display on her bridge as the enemy swarm fell into chaos. For the first time in months, the Zephyrians were winning battles instead of just surviving them. "The disruption is spreading," reported Ben Rogers from his tactical station. "The Devourers are trying to establish new command links, but it is taking time. This is our chance to hit them while they are confused." Fleet Singer Vexhai contacted the human fleet from his command ship. His musical voice carried new hope after so many months of despair. "Admiral Morrison," he sang, "my people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. But the battle is not over yet. The Devourers still control 3 dead worlds, and they are trying to complete their great weapon before we can stop them." Admiral Morrison knew he was right. The tactical advantage would not last forever. The Devourers were machines, and machines could be reprogrammed. They needed to end this war quickly before the enemy adapted to their new situation. She gathered her commanders for one final battle plan. The target would be Zephyr Central, the last world the Devourers were actively consuming. Intelligence reports showed they were rushing to finish extracting materials for their superweapon. If the Allies could retake that world, they could stop the construction project forever. "This will be our biggest battle," Admiral Morrison told her captains. "Every ship we have, every pilot, every Marine, we throw everything at them at once and hope it is enough." Captain Sullivan prepared his fighter squadrons for the largest space battle in human history. Amy Foster gathered her pilots in the Rangers' briefing room one last time. Many of the young faces looking back at her had been with her since the beginning of this impossible journey. "Today, we end this war," she told them. "The Devourers think they can consume everything in the galaxy, but they made one mistake. They messed with the wrong species. Humans do not give up, and neither do our Zephyrian friends." The combined fleet moved toward Zephyr Central in a massive formation. 200 human ships flew alongside 50 surviving Zephyrian vessels. They looked small compared to the Devourer swarm defending the planet, but they had something the machines did not understand. They had hope, determination, and the willingness to sacrifice everything for their friends. The space battle began when the fleets were still an hour away from the planet. Thousands of Devourer ships rose up to meet them like a dark cloud of metal and death. But without their perfect coordination, the machines could not concentrate their attacks effectively. Human fighters, working with crystal ships, tore through the enemy formations. Captain Oliver Stone led his destroyer squadron in a desperate charge against a group of Devourer capital ships. His weapons blazed as he fought ship to ship with enemies 10 times his size. Dr. Sarah Kim worked frantically in the medical bay as wounded soldiers were brought in from the damaged ships. She treated humans and Zephyrians side by side, using the techniques she had developed during the long journey from Earth. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Lieutenant Grace Murphy, working at her communication station, noticed something strange about the Devourer transmissions. The machines were still trying to coordinate their attacks, but their signals were becoming more and more chaotic. "Admiral?" Grace called out excitedly. "I think I found something. The Devourers are using a kind of computer virus to try to re-establish their network. But the virus has a weakness. If we can inject our own code into their system, we might be able to turn their own weapons against them." Dr. Turner, who was monitoring the battle from the bridge, immediately understood what Grace had discovered. The Devourers consume information from every species they destroy, but they have never encountered human computer programming before. Our chaotic, unpredictable coding style might be like poison to their organized systems. Admiral Morrison made a quick decision. "Do it. Upload everything we have. Every computer program, every piece of human software. Flood their network with human chaos." Carol Wright, the fleet's computer specialist, worked with Grace to create the most destructive virus humanity had ever designed. But instead of trying to be subtle or clever, they made it as random and unpredictable as possible. They included video games, music files, poetry, and even cooking recipes. Anything that showed how differently humans thought compared to machines. The virus spread through the Devourer network faster than anyone had hoped. Suddenly, enemy ships began firing at their own allies. Some started playing human music over their communication channels. Others began flying in patterns that spelled out words from Earth poetry. The mechanical precision that had made the Devourers so dangerous became their downfall. They could not handle the creative chaos of human thought. Their perfect logic systems crashed when they tried to process concepts like jokes, art, and the illogical things humans did for love. Admiral Morrison led the final assault personally, taking the Defiance directly into the heart of the enemy formation. Her massive ship's weapons carved through the confused Devourer fleet like a sword through smoke. Captain Sullivan and his pilots followed close behind, their fighters dancing between the giant ships as they struck at critical targets. Amy Foster destroyed 3 enemy cruisers in a single attack run, her ship weaving through defensive fire that no longer seemed coordinated. The battle for the planet's surface was just as fierce. Major Anderson led another ground assault, this time with both human Marines and Zephyrian Crystal Warriors fighting as a single army. They stormed the processing facilities where the Devourers were trying to complete their work. The machines defending the planet fought desperately, but they were no longer working together effectively. Some tried to follow their original programming, while others had been completely corrupted by the human virus. The result was chaos that the Allied forces could exploit. Sergeant Cooper led his squad through a Devourer factory that was simultaneously trying to build ships and play human jazz music. The strange combination made the machines easy targets for his rocket launchers. The final victory came when Dr. Turner discovered the location of the Devourer's main construction project. Hidden deep beneath the planet's surface was the partially completed superweapon, a ring of dark energy that could have destroyed entire star systems. Working together, human engineers and Zephyrian technicians reversed the weapon's energy flow. Instead of projecting destruction outward, it turned inward on itself. The resulting explosion was visible from space as a pillar of light that rose up from the planet's core. When the light faded, the Devourer threat was over. Their ships drifted, powerless through space, their mechanical minds destroyed by the chaos of human creativity. The ancient intelligence that had consumed hundreds of worlds was finally silent. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of her damaged flagship, looking out at the peaceful star system. 3 dead worlds would need centuries to recover, but the remaining 4 Zephyrian planets were safe. The superweapon was destroyed, and the galaxy would not have to fear the Devourers again. Fleet Singer Vexhi's message came through the communication system, his voice filled with joy and gratitude. "People of Earth," he sang, "you have saved not just our civilization but all life in the galaxy. How can we ever thank you for such a gift?" Admiral Morrison smiled as she prepared her reply. Around her, the bridge crew worked to assess the damage to their fleet and plan the long journey home. Many ships had been lost, and many good people would not be returning to Earth. But they had accomplished something incredible. "We do not need thanks," she told the Zephyrian commander. "We need friends. The galaxy is a big place, and there might be other threats out there. If we face them together, we can handle anything." In the months that followed, human and Zephyrian engineers worked side by side to rebuild the damaged worlds. The partnership that had been forged in desperate battle became something greater, a new model for how different species could live and work together. When Admiral Morrison finally returned to Earth, she brought with her not just victory, but the promise of a better future for all intelligent life in the galaxy.